Welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with your host, Daniel.
And Daniel.
The newly affiliated podcast. We got to point that out. People, this is an exciting day for our podcast. We've had a great year so far.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them about why we're excited, Daniel.
After, 4 years? I think
3
we
or 4
started.
years, yeah.
3 years, 4 seasons, I guess you could say. From 2020 to 2023, we've been on the path to get affiliated. Now we're officially affiliated on Twitch. And also to celebrate, we're on Apple Podcasts finally.
That's right. So now we can actually say, everywhere you find podcasts, you'll find us.
More than likely.
And to celebrate these great milestones that we've been doing and the fact that we're having a good time up in here, we're doing a giveaway as well. So stick tuned because we will be, or stick tuned. Stay tuned. I'm back in Nickelodeon days. No, stay tuned because we're going to be talking about how you can get in on this free giveaway. We're excited. Let's talk about this ridiculous episode that we have planned for you today.
Oh my God, isn't it ridiculous? It was a pain to do this because normally I don't have to do as much research as I had to this time around. I had to look up other people, Reddit threads, go through rule books that I do own that people suggested.
Uh-huh.
And so our topic today is the best and worst rule books.
Yeah. Now, and I had brought this up like somewhat jokingly, but
yeah.
I did genuinely mean it because I believe I recently had like a bad experience with a rule book or something like that, and I was like, you know what, maybe we should do that. And you suggested both best and worst because we don't like to focus on negative here.
Yeah.
We like to highlight some of the best parts, but we will dig a knife into and twist it if it's really that bad.
The easiest for me out of this entire thing were my number ones. My number one worst and my number one best. I knew right off the bat those were going to be there.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, we break it down. We're still just doing 8 games, but we do 4 bad, 4 good.
That's right.
And so we broke it down. I'm like, I knew what my number one bad was. I knew that when you suggested the topic.
Yeah.
I knew what my number one good one was because I always talk about how good this rule book is.
Yep.
And so we'll get into those when we get into those. But yeah, this was difficult.
It was. And and you and me were texting earlier today. We're like, yeah, so we'll meet up about this time. We'll plan this. And then I was like, man, this is kind of a tough list. And I just want to reiterate what our text. You were like, yeah, it took me all week. I'm like, yeah, I genuinely apologize about it. This was a really hard one. Sometimes I'll wing a podcast. I'll just go into it because I know so many of the things that fit in the category. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to pick the best worker placement. Sure, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
It's easy. And I realized today just how many video tutorials I watch over rule books long before I figured this out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big factor. I realized probably half of the games I own, I've never read the rule book. I could probably be playing it wrong.
I tend to watch it played or someone teaching the rules while I'm reading the rule book because sometimes I'll try to read the rule book beforehand. And it's a cluster. Like, some of the ones in here have really, really bad rulebook structure. Mm-hmm. And so I have to watch, someone teaching how to play the game. I'm like, oh, I get that. Or sometimes it's where, the Stefan Feld City Collection, the Marrakesh game. It's a bit tricky because there's just so many moving parts. Yep. So this way I can actually see how it works and then bring it into how the rulebook structures. Then it got a little better for me to understand the rulebook itself.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same way. Although I did a general cast of what I meant by worst rulebook. There will be some examples of things about rulebooks I dislike. Not so much that it wasn't clear or cohesive, but there were some examples where I was like, I really don't like what this is doing.
I remember one exactly from last week when we were talking about this.
Yes, and that will be one of my quick honorable mentions because it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, so all of our viewers who are joining us live, which first off, if you're listening to this later on, make it a point to try and join us on live on twitch.tv. Show your support. This is awesome. But on top of that, we like to hear your thoughts in the chat. So all of our viewers that are listening right now, we have a whole bunch of great viewers that are joining us. Please let us know your best and worst rule book. And we will get to you guys very shortly.
Before we get started into what we've been playing lately, we want to mention that there is a contest going on for a base copy of Marvel United. How you're going to enter it is you're going to email it. You're going to be entered it by 3 different ways: following us here on Twitch, following or subscribing to us on YouTube, and you're going to get a code word in the middle of the episode. You're going to email us at everyday2020@gmail.com. In the subject line, you're going to put contest, and in the bottom line or in the body, you're going to put the code word and a little bit your name and stuff like that for how we can get in contact with you if you did get drawn as the winner. But again, listen to for the code word. We tend to put it in between the break of what we've been playing and the main topic.
That's right. So listen for that code word, then you have a chance to enter in and get another free chance to get a base copy of Marvel United, as shown in my hand right here.
Yeah.
All right. So Daniel,
Yeah.
complete segue. Slightly used, slightly damaged copy.
Oh no, it's good. We got carpet. But here you go.
Yep. Gotta love that glare. See, you can
Still
tell
in
it's still in
shrink.
shrink, except for our wonderful logo sticker right here. It's beautiful.
Yep.
All right. But yeah, hang out with us for that. But with that being said, Daniel, what have you been playing lately?
I've been playing quite a bit of games.
Despite catch, other than
Yeah.
catch.
Well, I'm not really good with my left hand without a glove, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair enough.
But I have 4 games here, and I was telling you, we were talking about earlier about maybe cutting one of the what we've been playing segments off.
Yeah.
But as much games we play, there's no way we could do it because these are the earliest one is from 2 weeks ago. So, and this is the last time we're going to talk about it this month, basically.
Yeah.
So the first game I want to talk about is a game that I mentioned I played in the last subject, but I only kind of briefly because I want to talk about the other game we played. The first game I'm going to talk about is Gutenberg. That was played in the same game night that we played Tidal Blade's Banner Festival. This one is a fun, very intriguing Euro game about basically finishing contracts for certain books and stuff like that you need to do. So you're collecting resources. Your resources are ink, your letters for the printing press, and you're getting rewards by completing the contracts and going out there. It's got a very intriguing theme on it, and it plays over several bits of a round. So what you're doing is you're using your ink tokens to blind bid on the certain actions that you want to intrigue. So whoever had the most gets to take the action first, and they get to take one of the top or one of the sections first. There's 3 that are filled. You get first choice in that section. Then you move down to the next section, and the person who bid highest there gets to go first, and so forth. And you go through I think it's like 5 or 6 sections of it. So you're getting either letters or inks or new contracts, which basically have a top part and a bottom part. You always have to get the top part done because that's how you're going to get your coins. But if you do the bottom part properly, you can get some rewards. So, and it's usually brought up into 2 sections of the bottom part of that contract, whereas like if you have this, then you get this points. If you have this, you get this points or coins or whatever. But if you do both of those, you also get both rewards plus a bonus reward, so a third reward. So it's either points, ink, whatever you want. Whatever it says anyways. And it's very, very intriguing how this works. It's a very simple game for how heavy it looks. But it was not something that I need to go out of my way for, though. I really did want to try it. It looks really good, and it's really fun, but I think it's a little heavier than some of the people I play with would like. So, but if you get a chance, at least try it once. It's very intriguing how it works, and this is Gutenberg.
Fine, I will try it. I'm sorry I had to be out that week, Daniel. Yeah, it's one of the few.
I think you would dig it.
I don't get sick that often,
But
but
you
when I
guys-
do, oh, did that hit me hard. All right, the first one I wanted to talk about was one that we played during last week's game night, which happened to be my pick, of course. And therefore, I wanted to talk about it. This is a tile-laying game, beautiful theme, cool
I
mechanism.
knew this was going to be on your list.
Yeah, Okanagan. I thought this was a really nifty game.
It was. I really enjoyed it. If I do a rating system, we had a whole little fun about how I do.
Sure.
I don't do 0.5s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would rate the gameplay of this game an 8. It was phenomenal.
Wow, you really liked it.
However, it wouldn't be its final rating. The gameplay itself is really good, but I am going to knock it
yep.
because of its colorblind unfriendliness. There were
Yep.
sections where I struggled a bit where they're blending. I would still give it a 7. That's how phenomenal it is. The gameplay is really, really good.
Yeah.
I love that gameplay.
Yeah, it's just neat how it worked because the idea, it's a tile laying, and I'm a big fan of Carcassonne, so I figured I'd probably like this. However, you're trying to bid over these areas. Basically, imagine each square tile, there's an X in the middle, and it could be one of 4 different types of tile, whether it be water,
water, stone,
plains, like grasslands, or forests. And you're trying to combine the ones. You have to put them together, but then every single time you put down a tile, you have to put one of your wood tokens. You can have either like a farmhouse or like a barn or whatever it was. That's worth 3 influence, and you put it in a single type of
the resources.
Area
so the stone, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also the ranch houses, which are longer ones, and they border 2 different areas. And then the final one is, and that 2 influence points for each of those. And there's 1 influence, but it's like a little silo, and you put that in the middle of the tile, and it applies to all 4 of them.
Or that section, yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically...
You get 2 of those, so you get 2 silos, 1 farmhouse, and 1...
2 silos, 2 silos,
2 ranch houses, and 1 farmhouse. Yeah. You get...
And it varies depending on game.
That's basically the round counter, so once everybody plays out all their buildings, they're going to get a whole new set afterwards.
Yep. And so whenever you completely enclose one of the areas where it's surrounded by other types of tiles,
then the Carcassonne Castle.
Yeah, then it scores, and it'll go, like, all of the resources that are shown on the tile, whether it be like the person or the resources that it produces or whatever, happen, then whoever has the most influence gets that number of influence of resources. So let's say we close off a space that has 4 tiles on it. Daniel has 3 influence. I have 2 influence. You'll first get to pick 3 of them because you have 3 influence and you have the most. And I would only get the 1 remaining because that's all that's left, even though I had 2 influence. So it's a bit of area control, bit of tile laying, resource management, and all of these resources get to score in different ways. There might be combinations that'll be like, if you have like these 3 characters, it's 7 points for every set of that. Well, every single time you have a set, it counts for that, but on top of that, you also can use multiple tiles for multiple different scoring cards.
Yep.
And so that's really neat. But then whoever had the lowest amount of influence gets one of the special actions on the back of the tile stacks, which change as you're pulling tiles. So the whole game is just a great area control, great tile laying, cool little secondary action system. The area control, the set collection, the way you score is cool. But then the best part about all of it is that it plays in 2 halves. You start the game, you take 5 of your gold cards, and you only keep 3 of them. So you discard 2 of them. But then in the second half, you get another set of the same pieces, and then you draw another 2 cards. And again, you choose 3 of the 5 that you have. So you could just completely dump 1. You could aim for what you were going with. There's a bunch of stuff that you can go, it's awesome. I thought it was awesome.
I'm laughing because I remember that part of it where both of you got the 2 new cards and both of us were like, nope.
It's like, I have nothing for this. No thanks. Yeah, it was really great. Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's definitely staying in my collection for a long time.
No, it was really good.
I'm glad I finally got to.
Like I said, the gameplay itself for me is an 8, but the only knock is because of the graphic design, really, and it's not that much of a knock. It drops to a 7,
right?
And it's just because I struggled, like, okay, where am I putting this? Where does this go? Yeah. And it was because you had like brown and dark green and light green and blue.
Yeah, blue is the one we can
see. Yeah,
guaranteed. Yeah,
so
it was really good.
All right, so the next game I'm going to talk about is one that, this is probably going to be the negative game I'm going to talk about that I played recently. It's nothing wrong with the game itself. The game is fine. It's been sitting on my shelf of shame for several years. It was a gift from you. Unfortunately, I'm putting it on the sale pile.
Oh, I bet I can guess. Is it a party game?
Yep.
Is it the Deadpool one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deadpool versus the World. I finally played it. I was like, you know what? I need to get this. It's over there now. I need to get this played just to try it out. I really, at the point when you got it to me, I should have played it then because I was enjoying those games.
Yeah.
It is, in a sense, a Cards Against Humanity, apples to apples style game where You have one judge. What I liked about it though is like the judge cards are just a photo, and then the people have to use their cards to give you a scene or something they're saying.
Sure.
And it had its moments. It had its hilarity. But I just really don't like those style of games anymore. I mean, we had a decent time with it. It's not bad. Out of the three I mentioned, I'd probably keep this one over the other three. But it was nothing to keep my interest, really.
No.
My wife wasn't a fan of it. She found it okay. I did like the fact that it came with wet erase markers and then cards. Yep. And there was also ones where it already had a statement, or you can make your own statement. That was fine. So, but again, it's just not something I'm interested in playing anymore. I really got burnt out of Cards Against Humanity because people, my original game group, that's all they ever wanted to play is Cards Against Humanity, and I'm like, we played that for like the last 4 weeks. Let me try something new, or let's do something else. Wow. But yeah. No, but it's a fine game. If you like those style of games, I highly recommend it. If you're not into those style of games, then it's not something you need to go and look for.
Yeah. Cards Against Humanity. I wasn't going to talk about it, but we did play a game called Puns of Anarchy that does essentially the same system. Thing? But you're all doing it simultaneously, so it kind of works.
Okay.
And you're drawing on the cards and stuff. It was okay, but yeah, again, like as soon as we were done, we're like, yep, that.
It just
leaves a bad taste now.
It's not even that it leaves a bad taste. It's like if you've been eating boiled chicken over and over again. It's bland as can be compared to some of the stuff we do.
That's true. And as Lumina said, yeah, the Muggles still like games like that. That's fair.
And that's fine. And that's what I said. If you like,
we're not here to yuck your yum.
Check it out. It's not something that's going to intrigue. My wife didn't enjoy it. My game group didn't enjoy it. You're not a fan of those style of games anymore.
No, not really. I'll still play. There's a couple that I will, but that's.
But then again, it's because other people wants to play them.
Right.
It's not something you're going to go out of your way to play yourself. So.
Absolutely. All right. The first one I wanted to talk, or the second one I wanted to talk about, was one I just played this last weekend. This is a trivia game, and I don't tend to play trivia games all that much, but I did quite like this one. And although the group they didn't like it as much, this is called Half Truth.
I want to play this one so bad.
I like it quite a bit, but here's the catch to it, right? It's a trivia game where it asks you a question, and the catch to this, unlike every other trivia game, half of the answers are true, okay? They're half truths, right? So there'll be 6 answers, 3 of them are correct. They follow the order. It's like, which one is more than 1,000 years old? It'll list like 6 different like historical landmarks. Mm-hmm. Right, like the Roman aqueducts or the blah 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 pyramids, right? Yeah. And some more often than not, one is like really obvious, but then you're never sure about number 2 or 3. It seems, and so you roll a die, and that determines how much the question point is worth. So it could be anywhere from 2 to 4 points for the question. Bonus question or bonus answers are always an additional point, which I'll explain how that works in a moment. But then sometimes that die might change it around, like you're trying to find the incorrect answers.
Okay.
Or you're trying to find the, or it might give bonus points more. So the way it works is that you're going to be putting out chips, and if you put out 1 chip, then the base value of the score is how much you're going to get if you get at least one of them right. So if I bid on letter E, the Pyramids of Giza, and I'm right, then I'm going to get the number of points that it rolled. So let's say 2 points.
Okay.
However, I can still put out up to 3 chips as I want. And as long as I get all of them right, I get 1 additional point for every additional chip I put out.
Okay.
Which is pretty important.
Yeah.
Which is awesome because you could go for like broke and you can get like 6 points if you happen to get all 3 of them out. So it's a little bit of pressure luck involved in it.
Okay.
The questions are so bizarre, and they have a really good wide range. I mean, I think the main person is the main person who did it was Ken Jennings. I think he primarily did the questions part of it. So we had everything from we had a biblical question to a landscape question to a pop culture question. Like we had a big variety, and I appreciate the fact that it has that. But sometimes you just go into those questions and we're all just shrugged at each other like. Like mix up chips and guess. How would we know?
I do want to play this one though.
I like it. It was late into the night, and our group you know, they were iffy on it, but it might have just been because we were tired. But I mean, overall, they seemed to enjoy it. They just didn't. We weren't enamored with it, and this is about the third or fourth time I played it, and I liked it.
Okay, nice.
So that's Half Truth. Richard Garfield, Ken Jennings.
All right, so the third game I want to talk about is a game that I showed you. We kind of talked about it when we did one of our most recent podcasts when we were comparing and contrasting two games. But I want to talk about our actual gameplay of it.
Okay.
And this is Fallout, the board game.
Oh yeah.
We had a good time playing this one, and you mentioned in your in the topic itself, this is one of the board games that actually might get you into playing the actual game itself.
Yeah, the system it's based off of.
Yeah, so I liked it because one, I used the co-op expansion, Atomic Bonds, I believe is what it's called, and for me personally, this is how this game should be played. Instead of a point system, you're working together as a team, you're expanding the world, you're reading these things, and you're making decisions together, and it's fun. Oh my god, it's so fun. For even something that just straight up is a dice chucker, because you got to do skill checks as well as combat, it's just amazingly how it plays so well. Especially in the co-op form, where we're like, okay, I'm going to go take care of this to set this up. So, and then I set it up, and you're like, I'm in the general area. I can work on this now. And I'm like, cool, awesome. I love how that works. One, it's great production value for Fantasy Flight, through the roof on that one. Oh. Another thing about it, too, is with the co-op aspect is what you have to do is you have to reach 4 goals plus the main storyline stuff to win the game. So once we hit the main storyline, we're like, okay, who's close to doing this or this? So we're working on like different ones because we've already gotten 3 of the goals done out of the 4 that we need to do, and I think there's like 6 goals or something like that up there. Or no, we needed
3 of the 4 goals.
3 of the 4 goals. We had 2 done, so we were working on the other 2, which was one we were closer to do. But yeah, it was. I like the exploration. I love the combat. The VAT system was really neat. The checks were really cool. It was fun. It's just straight fun, and that's what board games need to be sometimes.
Yeah, and Corrupt brought up. It's like I thought the normal game was too long. I heard the expansion saves the game. Now, having played both the base and that, yes, the base is longer by itself because you're trying to reach a certain number of victory points. And Fantasy Flight is kind of notorious for that. This did shorten it, but just a bit.
Yeah,
it was not by any sense a short game, or it was only a fraction of the time that was saved.
And the thing is,
granted, we played it 4 players.
Yeah, we played it 4 players. No, we played it 3 players.
No, 3 players. Sorry.
It was just you, me, and Dom.
Yeah.
But the other thing too about this one is that you can actually play a longer game. They set it up where in the new California Republic, you could build up a bigger game with the board instead of the shrink down version from the original. We only played the original. It still took us about 2.5 hours or so.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't short by any means, but the fact that you're working together did it gave more purpose to why you're playing.
And the thing is, it didn't feel long either. Sometimes when you're playing these kind of games where it's competitive, it feels long, especially if you're not winning.
Yeah, like Eldritch
Horror. Eldritch Horror. Or
that
no.
feels long.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm thinking more of the lines of saying like Twilight Imperium 4th edition, when you're not winning and you're like really far behind and can't catch up to someone else, then yeah, it's going to feel long. Or just like games that have, Euro games that have like the runaway leader aspect of it. Even if it's only an hour game, if you're 30, 40 points behind first place, it's going to feel like a 2-hour game.
Right.
As you're working in a co-op together, it feels so much shorter. It doesn't feel like it's super long.
So, the next game I want to talk about was, I guess it would count as an Ameritrash game. Because I played a fantasy dungeon crawl game, killing things with dice. I played Dungeon Roll, and the way the game...
Oh, wait, we played that.
Yeah, back in the day. It's the one in the little treasure chest.
Okay, yeah.
From Tasty Minstrel games from back in the day. So, yeah, I mean, maybe not. It's more of a press relic dice game.
Yeah.
It's not so much Ameritrash, but thematically, it is 100% exactly that. No, what you're trying to do in this game, Dungeon Roll, comes, I don't think it's in print anymore, just so everyone knows.
Well,
if you find a copy in the wild, buy it, because it's a fun game.
It's not in print anymore, because the company that printed it is dead.
Right, I know that, but I don't know if it was sold or anything.
I haven't seen anybody have picked it up.
Neither have I. But dungeon roll, the way it works is quite simple. At the beginning of each delve, you roll your party dice. It's all the white dice, and you're going to be going against the monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Every level you go down is also the number of dice that the monsters roll. So if you're on level 1, you roll 1 die. You have whatever dice you have remaining in front of you to fight that. If you roll something like a potion or a treasure chest, those are loot that you can potentially get control over and pull tokens or change your dice. That's pretty cool. But you can also skip it in order to conserve the number of dice. Because what you're trying to do is have the most experience points. The farther down in the dungeon you survive, the more experience points you're going to have at the end of the game. Extra bonus points might matter as well. But there's also some certain kinds of monsters you can fight, like goblins, skeletons, and oozes. Each of those has a specific party type that can defeat all of them. Like clerics can defeat all of the skeleton dice in one roll if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So you only have to lose 1 die to get rid of all of those dice. So if you roll 3, that's a great trade-off. But sometimes you can send pretty much any hero to fight any kind of everything else. But there are dragons. And once 3 total dragons are rolled, then you have to fight the dragon. You need 3 different hero types to fight against it. Then if you do so, you defeat it, you get a treasure token and a free XP right off the bat. And then you still get to decide if you continue delving. It's super fun. I like it. I've always liked it. We played it 4 players. The only problem with it is that I normally have 1 player roll for the heroes and the next player in turn order roll for the monsters. But that means in like a 4-player game, 2 people are just sitting watching other people take a pretty decently long turn.
Mm-hmm.
This highlights specifically at 2 and 3 players. 4 was a bit long, and anything past that, because it's like a 1+ game.
Yeah.
I think it says 1 to 4, which makes sense, but really like 4, it's a little long unless you're really just engaged watching other people delve. It's pretty fun and exciting. Plus, you always get your own little characters.
And the thing about this too, when it comes to that with the 4-player game too,
right?
Because of the fact that it's push your luck game, it's still capable for you to be in there because you're egging on the person. You can do it. Let's go. Roll those dice again.
It's fun. It's level 5. You have 4 hero dice. You're fine.
You're fine.
You're fine. And they're all different monsters.
It's still slightly engaging, but yeah, I could see what you're saying about the 4-player aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not bad. I genuinely has always enjoyed it. Like I think it's great. You have different character powers that once you get 5 XP, you automatically level up, get a better ability, which is normally after your first delve, sometimes after your second delve. But overall, great experience. Like I hadn't played this since 2001.
Jeez.
Or 2021.
Wait, and it wasn't even out.
2021.
I was like,
it was only 2 years ago. But I don't remember last time I had played it, so I was like, you know what? That's on my shelf. I haven't played it in a while.
Yeah.
That needed to happen, and it did. I love it.
So the last game I'm going to talk about is actually one of my favorite games of all time. In fact, I think it was in my top 20, if not the top 10 of my top 100. Uh-huh. It is one of my favorite deck builders of all time. And the reason why I busted this one out for sure is just because I realized...
Dominion? No, I'm sorry.
I never showed this one to my wife. She's never actually played this game. And I haven't showed it to my other friends that I game with, my other game group. I'm like, all right, you know what? This is simple. I can teach the rules real quick. We don't have like a lot of time because there was a bunch of things and we only had a few hours to play games. So I'm like, I need to take games that I know the rules down pat. So I picked Ascension. I specifically picked the Dawn of Champions.
Your wife has never played Ascension?
No.
Wow.
And she knows that's like one of my favorite games.
I bet she was slightly underwhelmed.
She actually enjoyed it. It was her favorite game of that night.
Wow. Okay.
She liked it because the thing is, it wasn't.
As Luna said, it's okay.
Yeah. Just because it wasn't hard or like difficult for her to get, for one thing, and 2, it wasn't like mean because I'm not attacking her. Yeah. I'm attacking the middle and getting my points and stuff like that. So I showed it to my wife and our friends. They really enjoyed it. I specifically picked Dawn of Champions system. Yeah. Because it gives you something to focus with. Because you get a champion. So, like, I was the Lifebound champion. And someone was the Mechanic champion. So, it actually gives you something to focus on certain cards that you want to get. Because you'll get bonuses for getting those cards. And putting your champion into your deck if you reach a certain point. And then you can rally... If you're the Mechanic character, you can rally Mechana. So, like, if you buy a Mechana off the thing, and if you reach your certain threshold of points... if a new one comes up and it becomes mana, you can, if it's a monster, you fight it, get the victory points free of charge, or you get to take it into your discard pile. So I really did enjoy it. Every single one of them liked it. I think we played 3 or 4 games that night, and this was everybody's favorite. And even I was trying, because my wife was like, "Well, okay, we're just gonna be competing for second place because Daniel plays this so much that he knows." And I was trying to take it easy on them by going for like the low scoring cards, the low scoring monsters, just concentrating on my character, like the lifebound stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still destroyed them. I think second place was like 30 points behind me, and I'm literally trying everything in my power. I was like, because I had enough things like I could take out that, I could take out that, I could take out that. I'm just gonna buy this heavy infantry and this mystic, and I'm gonna buy this little lifebound card over here. I'm gonna use my excess points to give me move my bonuses up a little bit. Try everything in my power not to just throttle them, and I still won by like
without making it obvious that you're like throwing the game. Yeah.
And I was like, because I told him like, because this is your character, concentrate on your stuff. Like if you're Arcana or Void or something like that. So I concentrated on my lifebound stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I still felt bad. Though my wife was like, I thought you were going to kick our butts. And I'm like, yeah, I understand if I could have, but this is where the cards laid. Jesus, 30 points. But I could have made it like 100 points.
Well, that's very kind of you to do that, but as long as they enjoyed it,
they had a blast doing it.
And the last one I wanted to talk about today was a game. You know, lately, one of the things I've been trying to do is, like, I don't want my Shelf of Shame to exceed 100 games anymore.
Okay.
Now, I purposely did not make it a game, or make it a thing or a goal where I play all of the Shelf of Shame games this year, because I knew that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. Especially because we're always adding new Shelf of Shame stuff.
Right, exactly. So one of the things I've been trying to do is that as soon as I get a game before it goes on the Shelf of Shame, try to learn it real quick, play it just that way that Shelf of Shame isn't exceeding anymore, and then dig away at it throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, I found out on Friday that one of our local stores had a game in stock. I went to that store, they had to look in the back to find it. I bought it, learned it, and played it that night.
I know which one this is because we just talked about it.
Forbidden Jungle. I think I'm the only one in New Mexico who has this game. And I'm very proud of that fact. You know, hyping it up. No, Forbidden Jungle is the 4th in a quadrilogy of games. There was Forbidden Island was the
Great
first
game.
one. There's Forbidden Desert.
Even better game.
Forbidden Skies.
Great failure.
It's not that bad. I agree that it's not the best of the 3. It is by far the worst, but it's not bad.
It's not good.
Oh, I like it.
I would give it probably a 5. It's average at best.
That's fair, but it's
not a
compared to how many bad games that come out. Still
no. But I'm saying it's average at best, especially when you're comparing it to the first 2 that came before.
Right. It's hard to compare the 2. So this one, so your favorite is Desert, right?
Yes.
This Forbidden Jungle is the closest to Desert.
Okay, then I probably would do this one.
I almost guarantee you would.
Other than one problem.
What?
Frickin' tin. Why did you go back to the tin?
That's their thing.
It's a stupid thing.
It is a stupid thing, but it is the thing. And so, yeah, it's in a tin, and unfortunately mine was already damaged. Who knew? But I knew I was buying it anyway, so it didn't matter. The game works quite simply. You have the board laid out, like Forbidden Island at the beginning of it. You have a scenario of certain monsters that are out there. There are everything from hatchlings to, eggs to hatchlings to adult aliens. You are on an alien jungle planet, and you are trying to find these energized crystals. You have to find 4 of the 6 of them. There's 6 of them. 2 of them are duds, and actually, one of them is actually a nest for some of the aliens, which is great. And then you have to find the 4 that are charged, and then you have to position those tiles in a way that they surround a portal, and then get to that portal.
Okay.
So your goal is to portal yourself out of there. Now, unlike all the others, it takes a little bit of everything. It starts off with the tiles spread out. You're shifting tiles around, And sometimes you are actively going out of your way to destroy tiles. Because once you find the 4 crystals, you need to surround a portal. And one of the tiles actually lets you destroy other tiles on purpose to clear out the way so you can then shove it in there. But some of the problems with like the bad deck will have the threat rising, it'll have aliens moving around and stinging people. You'll have like hatchlings or eggs growing up to their next level.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have adults laying eggs. You'll have tunnels that suddenly hatchlings pop out of. You'll have the eggs being like populated throughout the area, and you'll be having them move around with the tiles that have different like they have little symbols on each of the 4 sides, which tells them where the AI system and where the monsters move to. And then sometimes they might even lay webs, which completely hinders your movement, doesn't stop them in the slightest.
Because they know where the sticky parts are.
That's right. It's kind of like the sand in Forbidden Desert, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to destroy those. But one of the coolest things about it is there's ways to manipulate them. They have different tiles that have machines on it where you can actually like either like there's one that's like the electrifier, where anytime aliens move on the electrifier, they're just incinerated. So that's cool. There's ways where you can maneuver tiles around or destroy them or gain other kind of benefits to where you just have to get one tile surrounded by 4 others and you win. However, there is 5 different ways to lose this game.
Jesus.
If you lose any one of the 4 crystals, game over. If any one character dies, game over. If the threat level reaches the top, game over. That's standard in most of them. And there's 2 others, but it's mean. Oh, the big one. If ever you need to put down webs, eggs, adults, or hatchlings, and you don't have any more in the supply and you have to put them down, game over. Yeah. So there's so many ways to lose, and we felt that it was a little random. Like, I mean, it's definitely more fledged out than the previous games. The previous games, it was just like one little thing moved, right? In this one, there's a lot of different variable moving parts. It wasn't complicated to understand how to play or to plan against it, but there was one point where no matter what we did, we flipped over the next card and it was just everything exploded like all at once. And it was a little anticlimactic, but I don't know. I would rank this right in between Forbidden Desert and Island for me.
Okay.
So far, after one play of losing.
Nice.
Granted, we started on normal mode. We probably should have started easy, but oh well.
So, quick question.
Yeah.
Did you play Mist over Carcassonne yet?
As a solo game.
Because I'm thinking if we have time tomorrow, it's going to be one of my games.
Or tonight. No, I'm just kidding.
Because though I'm a little hesitant.
I will teach you.
I'm a little hesitant with one of my games tomorrow, even though I like Thunderworks games. It's Acquire on steroids.
I heard about that. Dawn of Ulos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof. I3. I liked it. I only played it as a solo, though. And I don't tend to like multiplayers as solos. It was a simple puzzle. I played the easiest mode, and I absolutely decimated it. Because, yeah, I did enjoy it. I don't know if it's better than Carcassonne. I want to play it as a multiplayer. But
yeah,
I feel...
hence why it's probably going to be the third game of the night if we have the time.
Right.
Because Dawn of Ulos doesn't seem like it's going to take that long.
I beat it in 15 minutes.
Goblin Vault is not going to be that long. Because that's the other game. And it's a little card game that has like trick-taking-esque to it.
Okay.
And then the third game I want to play is Mist over Carcassonne.
Cool. I'll teach that one.
Yeah, so
that's easy enough.
Those are the 3 for tomorrow, but that's why I was worried. Because when I started reading the rules, I'm like, oh, this sounds very familiar. And then I saw the review, and I'm like, I was not wrong. It's Acquire on steroids, but I want to give it a chance. My thing about Acquire, though, too, and I was thinking about it, I do need to give it another chance. Mm-hmm. Because, again, I played Acquire when I was just getting into gaming.
Right.
So it was... the time I played
Acquire...
A
stale economic game might not be the best move.
Yeah, the thing is I played it when you were in Albuquerque. That's when I played Acquire.
That was a while ago.
Yep. So, but with that being said, contest time.
That's right. Let's talk about that contest. We're giving away a free base set game of Marvel United. The way you're going to enter, 3 ways. Again, subscribe on Twitch if you can. You don't have to do like a full paid subscription, that's fine. If you want to do that, that's awesome.
Thank you.
We
yes.
really appreciate that. Now that we can.
Just follow us here on Twitch.
Follow us on Twitch, so that way we know that you're there. Automatic free ticket. Secondly, subscribe on YouTube. That'll get you a free ticket as well. And thirdly, the most important way is by emailing us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com with our keyword.
So in the subject, put contest.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the body, you're going to put the keyword and how we can get in contact with you if you get drawn.
That's right.
Do you want to give them the keyword?
The keyword is...
Red Skull.
Red Skull, yes. I was like, wait, we didn't change it, did we?
No,
Red Skull. So, remember, email us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com. And in the body, after all that stuff, in the body, put the word Red Skull.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's get on to the topic.
All right, this is going to be fun. So we're going to start with the worst, correct?
Sure.
And of course, I have...
Or we could bounce back and forth.
It's funny because I have my thing written wrong.
Yeah.
I have worst here.
So,
Well, that's what I'm saying is that we're going to do... This way we can finish with the best.
Yeah.
So we do our number 4 worst, and then it goes to our number 4 west.
That's right.
Best.
So we're going to talk about the best and worst board game rule books today. And we're going to give specific reasons why they are the best or the worst, probably.
Before we get going, why don't you mention your honorable mentions?
Yeah, we'll talk about the honorable mentions here in one moment, but the best and worst rule books, I do have a couple honorable mentions. We're going to start with the worst on both sides. Illuminous did bring up the idea that Agricola is a really bad rule book.
That's what I was hearing.
Now, I own Agricola, and I love the game. I've only ever watched the video tutorials.
And
I've never learned how to read by the rule books.
Agricola, I don't know because you taught me.
Yeah, so mine was by the video. So again, some of these could be totally wrong, but these are the worst ones. But I want to give 2 quick honorable mentions of bad rule books. And one was one game that we played on that game night that was part of the inspiration of this list.
Mm-hmm.
And the rule book was fine. It did what it needed to do, but this is called Lancelot by WizKids. And this game, the rulebook was okay, but there was one part at the end of the round where you're moving around the board, and you're going to different locations, and each location has a certain ability that you're trying to do. But effectively, it's King Arthur themed, so you're moving around, trying to get the Excalibur, Quest for the Holy Grail, talking with Percival or Sir Galahad, getting like virtues, getting resources to slay dragons, whatever, right? It's a cool theme. Game itself is really fun. But when you get back to the round table, there's like 8 different actions that you could choose from, and you put your piece on one of those spaces, and then you take that action. The rulebook didn't say how to do any of this until after explained what you do at the end of the game. So during the game, it told you this is how you move in the piece on the spaces. This is what all of the non-round table spaces do. This is what you do at the end of the round. This is how you score at the end of the game. Oh, by the way, there's the round table.
And then not only does it tell you like the round table part of it, it's in that section that tells you who's leading the next round, because it goes from Arthur in clockwise. Mm-hmm. So if I pick Arthur, then I'm starting the next round. But if I pick, Guinevere, who is behind Arthur,
yeah,
I'm going last in that round.
Right.
It only explains it in that section. It doesn't explain it in the actual body of the rules.
Right. Yeah, it was completely nonsensical why they would put that there. It should be right after the specific actions. That's what stressed me out about it. The rest of the rule book was functionally fine. It's just fine. That little part was so mismanaged. The second honorable mention I had is a collectible card game, kind of. It's Keyforge. And that's because in the 4-player base game and in the 2-player like dual decks and the single-player decks, they don't include rule books. You must go online and get a digital rule book. Now, I appreciate the fact that they're trying to avoid errata, making sure that everything's up to date. I get it. If you wanted to get into this game, bought a 4-player base set, and wanted to learn, I don't consider a cheat sheet a rule book. I want the book to teach me how to play the game.
I also want most games to come with like a cheat sheet or a...
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's a great addition. But it doesn't teach you how to play the game. You have to go online to do it. It's like, we're not like playing a digital game here. we're not playing something that requires digital aspects. Like, I didn't. It's not on my list, but like, Chronicles of Crime.
Yeah.
Does a great tutorial digitally, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need the rulebook. But
Unlock
you know what?
does
It
one
includes a rulebook.
Unlock does a good tutorial.
Unlock does a rulebook, but it also includes a rulebook.
Yeah.
Keyforge, the 4-player, $40 base set, needed a rulebook.
Speaking of which, speaking of trading card games, everything I'm seeing, I'm buying into the hype. I just want to get 2 starter packs of Arcana.
I agree. I do too.
Because it looks really interesting.
It looks alright, yeah. It looks like a fun little game.
But I'm not going into like the tournament and stuff like that. Just give me the starter packs.
You know what? I bet the starter decks have rule books.
Probably, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that so made me mad. Even thinking about it now.
And as much as we love it too.
Yeah, and I like Keyforge a lot.
Hot take. This is coming from Ith3. Hot take. Every board game rulebook is bad. No rulebook can replicate someone just teaching or watching a video. Gun to my head, box backs that teach you the game and 1, 2, 3 step method. It's very hard to make a game whose mechanics is clean and then rules text that's easy to read, but still cover all the mechanics and then pair it with good graphic design examples. No, I have any of those things trip over each other. I agree with you. I understand where it's coming from, but I want it to be like where the rule book is at its most as simplistic as it could possibly be to teach you the game. There's always going to be errors. There's always going to be problems.
Sure.
But I don't want to be like, there's a game on here where, and I'll mention it later, that you have to go on Board Game Geek because there were so many errors on it that you needed to get the second copy downloaded.
Yeah, you had to get a whole new rulebook. It's frustrating. With that being said, the worst rulebook is Nyarlathotep. I have never heard that. Now, and as somebody who does game design, I honestly consider putting one of my rulebooks in this list for worst rulebook. Because it is incredibly difficult to write a good, logical, cohesive rulebook. And I 100% agree with Ith3. Because it is so hard to do that.
It's really hard. It's not enough.
But there will be reasons why these are the worst.
So, for me, and I have it written down, why my 4 worst are here for what they're here for.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is that they don't really cover everything that this game is supposed to have.
No, Ith3, please be difficult, because we're going to be throwing shade on these games.
Yeah, no.
Alright,
That
being said, let's start off with our number 4 worst rule book that we have. That'll be me starting off. My number 4, both of these rule books, they're not that bad, but they both do something that I very much dislike in rule books, and that is use a term, like that's somehow in gaming that they expect you to understand the term and just figure out what it is. And there's 2 examples of this. They're tied. One of them is Innovation, which is an amazing game, but who in the world knows what splay is prior to that game? I mean, it's spreading out cards in a way where you see either the sides or tops. I don't. Ith3, I'm not going to throw shade at Level 99 games, not because you're my friend, but because you guys write good rule books.
Yeah,
so
no,
I'm not worried about that.
I only own really one of your games. In Bullet, it was easy to learn and teach.
Yeah, you guys have good rule books. But, Splay. Yeah, so, Corrupt, here's the thing. I've been a magician for many years. I never heard the term splay. I understand what it means, but that rulebook for Innovation just said it like you're expected to know it. And the other game that does this is The Worst Game Ever, which, by the way, is a pretty darn fun game. I liked it. But it taught you the term the kitty, which is the pot, like what you're anteing into.
Oh, okay.
And again, it doesn't clarify what that term is. So when they're teaching you this game, such a significant part of it is based off of that term that they just expect you to know.
Yep.
It's like going into a trick-taking game and me teaching you how to play it by just going, oh, it's like every other trick-taking game. There's a trump suit. And you're like, I've never played a trick-taking game. What do you mean? Why do we have presidents in this? Right? That's not a term that's not used outside of that game. And that's the problem I have with it. So Innovation and The Worst Game Ever both do that. I do not like that.
All right, so my number 4.
Spread the cards is the common term now.
Yeah, so my number 4 here, the reason why it's on my list is because I actually came up with a different game. Because, again, this was very difficult. We were researching. I remember struggling with the original game, so this is considered my honorable mention. And this was Mysterium. The rule book was a little rough to read when you first learned how to play Mysterium. Luckily, I think it was like a watch it played or something like that. Really taught the game. But then I remembered something. I don't know why it popped in my head, but I'm like, oh, that is right. Because someone mentioned something about iconography that's not in the rule book, but it's there, and you're expected to know it. And it reminded me of an LCG style game. I think it was AEG called Doomtown Reloaded.
Yeah.
I was really looking forward to playing this game. I love Western themes. I was looking so intrigued to play this game. Finally got it played. I got halfway through with a buddy of ours, Gamehead Geek, and both of us were just lost because it doesn't explain anything thoroughly. It's not clear on a lot of the iconography. It was just bad. It was so unbearable to play this game after that one buy. It was actually one of the first games I sold in our Bookman's runs.
Yeah.
Because it was a struggle, and I wanted to love this game so much because I love Western themes. Western Legends is one of my favorite games of all time. This put a bad taste in my mouth for Western games for a while, and then when I finally saw Western Legends come out, I was quite happy. But yeah, Doomtown Reloaded, it was atrocious. It was not the worst one I've read so far. It's my number 4. But it was so bad, especially when I was just getting into gaming too. First time I was really teaching a game, and this thing didn't teach you iconography. It didn't explain how like the different factions work. It didn't even give you an idea which factions you should start with, really, for like the easier gameplay. Yeah, it was bad.
All right, number 3.
No, our number 4 best.
Oh, we're gonna go that way.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4 best. So my number 4 best. Is a game that we played also on that same game night. This is the last one I hadn't talked about yet. And that's because this is what gave me the idea for the best rulebook, is Seventh Continent. This is a pretty dense rulebook. There's a lot of iconography in it. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot to consider, and it is a little daunting. I brought it to work as a chance to try and read it in between, breaks and whatever, as I got a chance. This was easily one of the most clear, concise, just genuinely good rule books I've read in a long time.
And it's a genuinely good game too.
I have the I don't know what it's called, like the Essential Edition or whatever.
It's basically the board game store version.
Yeah, the board game store version, not the
big,
the fancy one.
Yeah.
But it was a good, easy read to something that I didn't know anything about going into. And normally I try to watch a video beforehand or watch like a tutorial, and I just decided, well, let's just try reading the rule book. And I actually kept reading it because I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And they have plenty of examples. They have plenty of pictures that describe it. They have iconography charts. They have some lore if you want it in there, know. And it just has like the whole systems, and I just felt that it was a really cohesive, good rule book. I didn't have many questions after we played it. In fact, I'm not normally that confident going into like a bigger game like this. And especially with you guys, where I'm like, I know that if I teach this wrong, it's gonna be the end of me and the game. But like, I went into it like I was like, no, look, this is exactly how this works. Let's go.
All 4 of us.
And
really
I taught you guys like it was smooth.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I've never taught this before, but look, this is the ultimate goal. We don't know what we're aiming for. It's going to be vague on this, but this is what you're looking for, and this is what we think we can do.
Yeah.
And this is some of the stuff we may encounter. With that being said, let's go for it. And you guys all just like, well, let's start doing this, let's do this. And it worked really well.
Yeah. It was a really good game. I really did enjoy it. It's fun. It's really, really fun. I do have one problem with it, and I think part of it's because it was late at night, and 2, there was a part where we're trying to find something, and I don't want to give spoilers, but we were looking for something, and at that point was like we were kind of trapped. Me and Gamehead Geek were trapped in one area, and it's like, you guys just take all the turns you need, and we're just going to sit here and twiddle our thumbs.
Right.
But again, it also because we were all getting tired. It was the 3rd game of the night.
Well, one of the things I like about that, though, and I think it was less painful to you guys, is that unlike most games, everyone's not required to take actions.
Yeah.
No, you literally just go, okay, you can take as many actions as you want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's your checks only affect the party as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not like in Time Stories, for example. That's a similar theme game
Yeah,
where like
similar-ish, yeah.
Similar-esque that you're trying to determine the answer and then find a way to solve it.
Yeah.
Is that everyone has to do their action every turn, and that's way more painful. It's like, oh well, I guess I'll just move over here and read this card again.
Yeah.
You know, like this. No, it's like no, you can just keep taking actions, and it's not going to penalize us.
Yeah,
I like that system,
and it moves quickly too. So.
And the rules were very clear about that too. It's like you take whoever wants to take the action, whatever makes sense. And we all played very generously.
Also, like just like that too is like, hey, you want to come with me to take this action? Because what happens is like the cards that you check.
Yep.
Someone can take one of those cards. I'm like, okay, I already have the blue, but if you come help me, hey, there's a blue card that I can throw to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's awesome. And the rule
really
book,
cool.
definitely, it took a little while to read, just because it's a bigger rule book, but it's not, it helped me get the game faster to the table. I don't think we had to look at the rule book, did we?
No, we didn't really reference it. I think we referenced one thing.
Yeah, there was one question I had, and then I was able to find it pretty easily.
Yeah.
So, good on you, Seventh Continent, the company that makes that. I don't remember, but yeah.
Awakened Realms, awesome. I believe, no?
No, it's not Awakened Realms. It's a different company.
Okay. Anyways, my number 4 best is actually a big company. I have a lot of their games. It's one of my favorite companies. It's Stonemaier. And the one I went with this one was Tapestry.
Oh, okay.
Because as big and grandiose, and don't get me wrong, I know there's a bunch of erratas for the civilizations and stuff like that, but it's just how to fix the civilizations and make them more balanced. Mm-hmm. But the actual rulebook itself, it's 4 pages for this heavily dense game. That's all it is. It's 4 pages. Front, back, 2 pages each.
No.
But it was such a quick learn, really easy to learn, and what I liked about it most, easily referenced. Yeah. So, like, if there's something that you need to look up, it's right there. It was really quick. The Yatoma rules, I think, had more rules than the actual base game.
Yep.
But, and again, another thing great about this rulebook is that it was 4 pages. It was really easy to learn, but it made it so easy to teach this game too. Because sometimes the Stonemaier games are not the easiest. Wingspan is a lot harder than, say, Tapestry to teach, because you have to do this and use this to buy this. Where Tapestry is like, you move over here, you pay your resources, you're good.
Right.
It was really quick, and I think out of all the games I've owned of Stonemaier, which is all of them, this is probably one of it. This is easier than it's roll and write. Yeah, much easier than it's roll and write, because not only do you got to learn the rules of the roll and write itself, each card has their own rules for scoring. So Tapestry, probably their simplest rule book out of everything I own, and I looked at it like 3 or 4 times when I was coming up with this list, and I'm like, yeah, no, Tapestry is on this list.
And Illumina says, seriously pulpy. Serious pulp. I do want to do some honorable mentions as far as the best rule books, though. Okay. Because I didn't get into that. I didn't realize we were going to bounce back and forth. That's fine. 2 quick honorable mentions. 1, Pandemic Legacy Season 1 has a great rule book. Because not only is it cohesive, but my favorite part about what it does is it will have specific portions of it where it says, if you're familiar with Pandemic, this is what you do differently. Mm-hmm. That saves you so much time. Yeah. Because I'm very familiar with Pandemic prior to going into that. That was a great solution. I got to give them credit for that, where it's due. And then the other one, and this is not so much a rule book, but the whole point of the rule book is to learn the game. And when I have a demo that gets me to the game quicker, especially a big, heavier game, and it's that impressive. I normally don't do shout-outs to people who taught me board games, but Connor, the owner of Inside Up Games, taught me and our mutual friend and a group of 3 other players how to play Earth, and that was the most concise, impressive demo I've ever been a part of. Out of 8 years of me doing demos, that was better than anything I've ever taught. And I felt pretty confident in how I teach. And that was just so concise. He broke it down into the best detail, and it was really awesome. I just had to shout that out because that was really impressive. If you ever get to learn a game from him, enjoy, because it's a pleasure. All right. With that being said, let's go into our number 3 worst board game rule books.
Starting with you still.
Starting with me again. this game, it's a very unknown game. It is a two-player mahjong themed game. It's from Z-Man Games, and older. They had like some small box lines, and this is called like Tien ZQ or something like that. Tien ZK, something like that.
Yeah.
And at the time, again, I normally try to find rule book or video tutorials how to play it.
Yeah.
Well, there was only one other YouTube channel that covered anything about this game, and that was Bauer's Game Corner, which I'm a fan of his stuff. I like his stuff quite a bit.
Okay.
And because he's brutally honest about stuff. And it said in his review, my God, this rulebook is awful. And I watched his video after reading the rulebook and going, huh? And it is one of the least comprehensive because one of the big things about this is that you score in like 5 different like ways, and each one of those ways has about like 2 or 3 different scoring possibilities in it. Like you might be trying to get runs of certain colors. You might be trying to get different colored dragons or different named dragons. You might be trying to get sets of collections that score in certain ways. Or if you get a single card of one type, you can score points in different ways. And the rulebook did say how to do that, but in a seemingly random order on how everything scores. And then on top of that, it was just so bizarre because it didn't tell you that you can score multiple cards in multiple ways. But then when you score them, you set them down and then you keep only certain cards from the score. And then of those scored cards, you score another time once you've done enough scoring to score the next pile. Like, it's so... And it's just like, it's a pamphlet like that long. And you unfold the paper. And it's so ridiculous. I still don't know how to play this game. It's one of the few... Yeah. It's one of the few games where I read the rules and I saw the review and the guy, he explained it very thoroughly. I feel confident I can play it because of how he explained it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think if Bauer's Game Corner didn't do that, I would not have been able to figure it out. And it's not like they're supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be a simple game. But man, do those rules suck. So yeah, I can see why that's never been reprinted or anything like that.
Before we go on to my number 3 worst, quick congratulations to our friends over at Level 99 I3. You guys did fund, it looks like, pretty well, and you still have 20 days to go, so congratulations.
Good deal. So if you guys like anything about Guilty Gear or this style of game, I know the system well. It's a very cool system. Go check it out. Seriously.
Alright, so my number 3 worst rulebook is a game I really did enjoy for the longest time. I've actually played through everything in this series. I think there's 2 expansions, maybe, to this actual game itself. It's a Plaid Hat game. It's one of my favorites, Mice and Mystics. This rulebook, though, oof, it's a chore. Luckily enough, I was taught how to play this game, and then I learned the rulebook.
Yeah, upon going back into it, right?
Yeah, but so it doesn't address all the possibilities that could happen in this game. You look and be like, okay, this happened, what do we do? Doesn't tell you, and never explained it. Or you're going into a certain scenario and you'd be like, okay, we did all this stuff, but what happens now? It doesn't explain that. It is a struggle sometimes. Like I said in my notes here, it teaches the game okay. It doesn't teach it great. But the fact that it doesn't, give you not even just an errata, but like FAQs or just possibilities that could happen, the nuances of the game, there's no way to reference certain things. It's just a struggle. And teaching this to other people, and then something happens and be like, I don't know. And this is like newer into the gaming, so I was like, we'll just allow it that we succeeded or something, because now playing enough games, I know if it's like, hey, if it's good for you or bad for you, take the bad thing.
Yeah.
This one doesn't really explain that. What's another one? Vagrant Song. It explains that if the worst possible scenario for the players, that's what's going to happen. This one doesn't explain, like, all right, make it easier for yourself, or make it harder for yourself, or figure it out yourself pretty much. Mice and Mystics, fun game. The rule book is not all that great. It doesn't address all the possibilities, which is hard, especially when it's a dice chucking game. But it doesn't, like, some of these things from what I was researching online too are common occurrences, and there's nothing out there to explain how this or that works.
Right. All right.
Number 3 best.
Number 3 best. All right. Going to our best list.
Oh, look, I get to start.
That's finally.
All right, so my number 3 best, I pick a specific game because this is the one I play the most, is the one I teach the most. But this line of games, they do a great job of teaching these games. For me, the one I picked was Just One, but most of the repos like So Clover, Fun Facts, I don't know about the newest one, but repos themselves put out some really decent rule books and how these games are supposed to play.
Right.
I picked Just One because, again, it's the one I teach all the time. It's the one I learned by the rule book. You kind of explained it to me, but I learned it through the rule book.
Yeah.
And it's real simple. It tells you quickly. It gives you pretty good examples into it. It's another one of those that is just kind of like 4 or 5 pages. It's not a lot. I think Repos does a phenomenal job. Just One was the start of it. Fun Facts, another one that's really simple, really easy to teach. You look through the rule book. Okay, I know how to play this game. Yeah. Another one, So Clover, which is kind of the heavier of the 3 I just mentioned.
Right.
Easy. Another one that just teaches you pretty good.
Yeah.
But I went with Just One because it's real simple. You can basically teach the game by going, you look at a card, you pick a number, and then everybody has to give a clue based on that card, but they cannot match, or you don't get clues to the person who's guessing.
Right.
But the way that rule book is written, it's very easy. Like, I read it, took like 2 minutes to read it, and I'm like, I know how to teach this game now.
Yep, exactly. Because I teach it the same way it reads, right?
Yep.
My number 3 best rule book is also a party game. And now, I want to be clear, like, even though I instinctively wanted to go for, well, what's like the more difficult games that I learned how to play, and how did the rule book help me then? You know, a party game can actually really justify it.
Yeah.
And the one I picked was the green team wins. And the way the game works is that you're going to get points by entering the green team, which means that if you're in the majority of the answers, like, and a lot of the answers are very subjective on purpose, if you're in the majority of the answers, then you become part of the green team and you get points for getting on. And then every subsequent turn that you stay on that team, you're going to get points as well. Now, what makes the rulebook so good about it is, like, right at the end, the rulebook and the game is very much like akin to just trying to be humorous, and sometimes that can be a detriment to the game. No, this says, look, as you can see, there's like only really 2 rules, and most of those are just making stuff up. It's like
yeah.
the idea is simple. If you're not on the green team, get on the green team. If you're on the green team, stay on the green team. That's your goal. And it basically summarized it in a very humorous way at the end of the rulebook that I thought was just really refreshing, really cool. I liked how it did it. Green Team Wins is my 3rd favorite rulebook.
Nice. I do have to play that one. It looks really cool.
It is fun. Yeah, the rulebook really lent itself to it. Like, I remember exactly how to play it now, and it's nice and fluid just because of that quip, that they put on it.
It's funny, I'm looking at my number 2 here for worst. You're going to agree with me on this one.
Oh,
and I don't think you've even read the book.
Probably not, but I'll be starting this off. Number 2 worst rulebook is it's a game from Mayfair Games from back in the day, and and
that's not saying much.
I don't remember if I played it with you or I played it with my other game group, and this is a game called Nuns on the Run.
You played it with the other game group.
Yeah.
What's funny?
This had,
as you're mentioning it, when I was looking the research and stuff like that. This was almost a lot of people's number 1s.
There is 100% a reason for that, and that's because this is one of the most nonsensical rule books. There is more than a half of a page dedicated to just line of sight issues. Now, granted, that's part of the problem with the game, but when it's one person versus everybody else, or really it's just asymmetric. It's one person and everyone else is against that one person, but you're all against each other. It's whoever fulfills their goal separately. There was very few examples in the rulebook. Most of the movement examples were strewn in amongst like the rooms that you go to and how line of sight works. The function of like when you do stuff, when stuff is triggered, on top of the super random like how do you move? Do you walk? At every step in the movement, you have to figure out if there is like line of sight issues or if somebody hears you. If you only play certain kind of movement cards, they can hear you, and then the nuns will go towards your characters. It's so convoluted, and on top of that, Mayfair made a game or made a video, a tutorial video on how to play it, and it was like this weird little disembodied glove figure and like the cheesiest damn narrator, and they were teaching it, and they kept throwing in like 1980s style like lame jokes. It's like where the glove would pull out like a bread roll. It's like, no, it's not nuns on a bun. And it was so obnoxious that when you get that frustrated with a rule book and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna find a tutorial, and you watch the published tutorial from the publisher, and you're like, you know what, the rule book is worth bearing through at that point. No, I think this would have been a good game. I think this would have been much more fun if it was streamlined and had a decent rule book. But when they're making jokes like, oh, nuns with guns, and like you could hear the deafening silence that a glove can't laugh, not that it would have. Anyway, that's my number 2 worst rule book.
Sorry, I'm just my mother-in-law's messaging me right now, so
tell her we're doing something important. She can wait. No. Sorry, that's rude.
All right, so my number 2 worst goes along with what you were saying about Nuns on the Run, where it's doesn't explain everything it needs to do. Right. There is parts of this game where you're like, okay, how does this work again? And this one is Great Western Trail. Okay. I do have a new version of it, so I want to see how that rule book is compared to...
You're talking specifically first edition.
Yeah, I'm specifically saying the Stronghold version, the first edition of it. There is some really
The one with the wax figures on the cover, right?
Yeah. There's some really, really big problems with this rule books, because... And I remember when we were playing it, and it's like, okay, what happens if you do this? And so I go to the section that talks about it, but in fact, it's not in the section where it should be. It's like 3 pages later when it actually gives you an example to the question that he's asking me. Mm-hmm. There's little nuances that are very important to the game where it doesn't explain it very well when it's basically you're upgrading the things, where you can use the deduction from something that you already have to go to the bigger style of buildings out there. It doesn't explain that very well, which is a very big important part of the game, because that's how you're going to get your points and stuff like that. Oh my god, this was a struggle. I liked the game for what it was doing, but it's not streamlined, it's not efficient. I hope they fixed a lot of the stuff in the newest edition with the way the rulebook reads and gives you better examples. The art's already better, I know that much when I was putting it all.
That's a given.
Yeah. But it was a struggle, because there's like key components of this game that they don't explain, and you were talking about it with Lancelot, where it's like, hey, the big part of the game, they put it at the back end of the game, where like there's important sections like when you're like that I was mentioning, like when you're building the buildings, it explains how you build the buildings, but then it's like 4 pages later how it explains how you upgrade the buildings. It's like, well, why don't you put it with the building? Here's the buildings, here's the upgrades, put them together, this way it's easier to understand and read. But yeah, it was all over the place with this rule books, and the fact of the matter is, I know they could do rule books, because there's a game from Stronghold that has a good rule book that's next in my best section. Ooh. But this one was so bad. It almost killed this love for this game for me. I really liked what this game was doing. When you said, hey, I found this copy, I'm like, hey, can I have that? And you're like, can we trade? This way I could do a trade fodder? I'm like, yes.
Yes, we can. You're darn right we can.
But Great Western Trail, the rule book was just,
Yeah, just unpleasant. Just a big no. Yep. All right, and now we're going on to our number 2 best rule books. Here we go. I'll start us off. All right, my number 2 best rule book is one that you and I reference from time to time again, and we've brought this up many times on the podcast. But it does something so simple that makes it so effective. It takes a cohesive rule book and adds enough humor into it to where you're going to learn how the game works, how it functions, and you're going to enjoy yourself while reading it. Dungeon Pets.
Oh God, I love that one. That rulebook's fun.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the few rule books where I encourage people. It's like, well, you're going to play the game or not. You should read the rule book. Because it's hilarious.
I like the fact I knew this was going to be on your list because it always makes us giggle every time we bring it out. So I'm like, I don't have to talk about it. First off, I didn't read the rule book. You just read it to me in a sense. It's like, oh, dude, you got to check out this line.
Yeah. I showed you parts of it because it's just so darn funny.
It's hilarious. And the thing is, like, my big thing is like, oh yeah, you take this thing and you get meat inside. I don't know what happens to the animal. You just get meat.
Yeah. No, it's just like don't mind the fact that more meat is added into the meat plant, and it's so simple because like when one of your dungeon pets need to be sent to the farm, as you will, it says, oh, and don't mind the fact that there's more meat, and then it tells you to add meat tokens to the place where you get meat. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a heady game. There's a lot going on, but I'm gonna remember parts of that game very distinctly just because of how simple that rulebook was and how effective that humor that they added into it really made the game stand out.
Yeah, no, I really did enjoy the game itself, but just parts of that rule book. And I only read parts of that rule book, but it just made me giggle every time you're like, and this part's cool.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, well, you have to send the goblins to go clean up poop and stuff, and then all the little subtleties on the board that really just add to the flavor. It's so cool. I mean, I don't even own the game anymore, but I have nothing but fond memories about that.
Yeah.
About the rulebook, the game itself.
The only problem with the game
gonna play it
is it's so heady. It's just not going to get played in. It might get played in our game group, but it wouldn't be played in the other ones. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Dungeon Pets.
My number 2, I mentioned it with Great Western Trail. This is a stronghold game that does a rule book really good, and this is Terraforming Mars. No, and I even put it here.
I've never read the rule book for it.
For a big game and a very heavy game, and it's a large rule book. It's not a small one. But it's really thorough, so I understand how this works and how that works, or how this section works. I have to only reference it a few times when I first taught the game. But even then, now and I don't play it all that much, but I play it a lot. I am thorough enough to the fact that I could teach this game without referencing the rule book, but that's how good the rule book taught me the game. Right. It has a lot to learn, but has a good explanations and good ways to teach you this game in a sense, because it's like, okay, you do this and this. Here's an example how this works. Oh, okay, I see how that works.
Yeah.
For the fact that they could have done this for Great Western Trail. Terraforming Mars came out before Great Western Trail. It's like, how do you not do the same thing? Because it's, and I think a big part of it too is because it's coming from Firaxis as well.
Yeah.
Or Firxis, or whatever the
Frixelius,
something like that. Yeah, Frixelius Games, I think, is it. Firaxis is Civilization.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very thorough. It's very easy to read too, and that's a big thing. It's like sometimes these rule books are very heavy, very very heavy. This one's easy to read. It gives you good explanations, teaches you how to set up everything, like the new expansions and stuff like that. What I really wish they would give us in the expansions is just give us like an or like a book with all the expansion stuff in it, because I like that with Great Western Trails, but this game does a heck of a job. So number 2, Terraforming Mars.
Very cool. And number 1, worst rule books.
Starting with me, it's good.
That hurt.
Because you already know what my number 1 is. I've talked about this ad nauseum. I hate this rule book to the point, and I referenced it before, it was so bad they had to put up a second edition rule book on Board Game Geek when everybody was getting their board games. And this one is Batman.
This was the only one you said hands down, this is on
the list. Is Batman Gotham City Chronicles. This rule book was, and it's funny because I wasn't originally reading this book. Our mutual friend, Gamehead Geek, was trying to teach this game, and it was so bad. He's like, hey, can you just check this out? Because he has some learning disability issues that he's talked about. But even when I was reading it, I'm like, what the heck does this mention? We go to reference something, and it's not even in the rule book at all. We had to go onto Board Game Geek and download the new rule book and the game reference points to figure out what certain things needed to be done, because it has a symbol on the board. You're like, what does that do? And it doesn't explain it at all. It was so bad. It doesn't explain anything well. It doesn't explain how the game plays. I think the best thing it explains is the river system that this game runs. That's it. And that's, again, that's important because that's one of the main things that this game has to do is that river system. But yeah, to the point that you had to go to Board Game Geek to read the errata. They sent this game out with such a bad rulebook. They immediately had to come up with new files, new ways to do it, and put it on Board Game Geek as people are getting their games. Because the people who first received their games were complaining about it and saying it's bad. And so it was just, it drove me insane because it's bad enough you give a bad rule book and there's people who struggle with disabilities and stuff like that. That other people who don't struggle with reading didn't understand anything it was trying to say. It was a jumbled mess. It didn't explain symbols.
A day one patch, if you will.
And it was bad. Oh my god. And in fact, when you came up with this, like, I already know what my number one is.
Yeah, there's not even a choice on there.
To that point, after that play, I have not played this game again, nor do I want to, and I love Batman.
Yeah.
Batman is like one of my favorite comic book heroes, one of my favorite superheroes of everything. I used to collect all the Batman comics, and now I'm just that game itself. When they were like, "Oh, we're gonna come up with the second edition," I was like, "No,
no, you're not. Not my money.
You ain't getting my money for it. No, you guys were you pissed the bucket. Let me tell you."
All right, my number one worst rule book is legendary in my household. Because of just the rule book led to a whole series of events that I will just have to explain in detail. Now, most games that we talk about on this podcast are designer games. They're modern, they're like what makes a rule book extra bad is when people are excited to play it, like Batman. That hurts when somebody's like, I'm really excited about Batman. It's not just like some Monopoly ripoff.
And the thing about that too is that game was $300 and something.
Yes, yeah, and that's frustrating. Now, my number one worst rulebook is not one of those. It's not a designer game. They didn't put the designer. I mean, I know who designed it technically. I know the group of people that designed it, and this game, it's called Tombstone. And this was made by the Tombstone City Chamber of Merchants, based off of the city. And the reason this game is so bad, or this rulebook is so bad, is because it is a roll and move, and all you have to do is go from one corner of the board around a Monopoly-looking-esque board, and just move your piece to the other side. Now the game is really bad. Okay. It's phenomenally bad. And one of the big awful rules in it is that if your piece lands on a space with another piece in it, they go back to the start no matter how far along they are. The rule book, which was only a single sheet of paper, left so much ambiguity into that phrase that we had to try and assume what they were meaning by it. And what I mean by this is that there are so many different spots where you lose turns, where you move around the board a number of spaces. There is a couple spots where if you land on it, you will bounce 2 or 3 spots. Now, we don't know if you're supposed to stop after the first movement, after the second movement, or if you just keep ping-ponging until you just stop moving and you land on a space where you just essentially lose a turn. The problem with that is when you have such theoretically simple rules that cause that big ambiguity, that's a significant problem.
Mm-hmm.
And what we ended up doing, there would be situations where I would be 3/4 around the board, jump back 6 spaces, jump forward 3 more, jump back another dozen, land on someone's space, they go back to start, and somehow I lose a turn in the process. Because of this rule book, we created a whole YouTube series called Bottom Shelf, which you could still find on YouTube. We did that, and you can actually watch us play it. And we got to the point where it was so obnoxious that we made a whole worst of the worst board game series because of this game. And it was because of that rule book and the vagueness of it that caused this ridiculous shenanigans. So if you want to see us rage on a game like this, this is the best example we've ever found. Tombstone.
All right, let's go to our number one best.
Number one best. Daniel,
I flip the coin.
I'm not going to flip the coin. I'll tell you why. I peeked over at your page a little bit because I'm willing to bet I know what your number one is.
Okay.
And that's because it's also my number one.
Really?
Yes, 100%. It is the best rule book. It is so good.
It's so good.
Yeah, just tell them what it is. I couldn't agree more.
It's Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion.
Yeah.
Again, this is the number one that popped in my mind right away about the good, the best about it, because it teaches you the game in pieces. The first through 5 scenarios, basically, it teaches you how this works, how this system part of it works, what this does, and it gets you going. And then the 5th scenario, part of that scenario, is it teaches you how boss fights work. So it teaches you every single part of the game as you're playing said game.
The rulebook creates a tutorial system, non-app driven.
Yeah.
And it goes through stages of teaching you how the game works using interactive play in an actually pretty fun way to do it. Like you're probably not going to lose. You really get into it,
yeah.
But you're having fun doing it. Like that's it. Like it's as close to a video game tutorial as you can imagine, because it's like we want you to play the game quicker, so play the game and you'll learn how it works as we introduce
teach you as you play. Yeah, so like in the first scenario basically just teaches you combat, how to use your cards. In fact, it even gives you cards that you only use for this combat.
Yes.
And then when you go to set 2, it keeps you those cards in your hand, you add a little bit more cards in your hand, it teaches you a whole new system, and then when you go into the 3rd stage, it takes those training wheels off of the cards, and it has you build or use the set cards that they come with the game itself. And once you get that done, it teaches you, okay, this is how you level up. Okay, it teaches you that system. And also, during that time, the first one is basically the basic combat. You're using this to attack, you're using this to move. That's it. In the second scenario, it's teaching you the magic system of this game, which does really, really well. And the 3rd scenario is teaching you how to upgrade and all this and that. And like I said, it teaches you all the way up to a boss fight, because Gloomhaven is a dungeon crawl game. As you're going through a set of scenarios, it's a bunch of campaigns that you're going to end up fighting bosses throughout the game. This one teaches you in the first 5 scenarios how the entire game is going to play. Once you're done with that, you know how to play this game, and you can go back to for like certain references and stuff like that, but it's not something that's going to be difficult for you to go, okay, oh, this is the scenario that mentioned in like the 2nd scenario. Okay, I get how this is going to work.
Right.
I know how this magic system works as you're playing the game. It's phenomenal. I think this is by far how more board games, especially big ones that are campaign style, should teach new players how to play their game.
Yes. And not only to that point, I want to give it credit because, so I demo games at our local shop and I teach people how to play. And I brought Jaws of the Lion a number of times. And part of my job is to give them the full experience as best as I can, so that they know what they're getting into when they buy it. This is one of the few examples that the tutorial system will do better than me teaching. Because if I just teach them the first game, I taught a group how to play just the first set of scenario, like the same way that the rulebook would have, and they thought that was just it. They thought it was just going to be bland. I'm like, no, trust me, there's more to it than this. This is just the basic functions. And it was almost a detriment, like, teaching it that way. It would have been better for me to just go, here's the rulebook. There's a number of stages into this, but read the first scenario and it'll explain everything. It probably would have done a better job than just me actually breaking down the specifics of it and teaching them how to play and giving them that false expectation. It works really well, and I can't agree more. Like, that was one of the first ones that popped in my head, and I was like, I know you're going to have it, and that's why I peeked over. I was like, yep, okay, I wanted to make sure, because I knew we were going to have this crossover.
Yeah, because Honestly, and we've talked about it a lot on this podcast and stuff like that. When this came out, we were like, "This is the best way to teach these really big games, not just big games. Other games should yes, it is hand holding. Yes, it is a tutorial. It's the first 5 scenarios out of a book that's basically 25 scenarios.
Yeah. It's
However,
1/5 of the game is teaching you how the system works. You'll never have to reference it again.
I went from original Gloomhaven to this one. I taught you original Gloomhaven,
yes,
which I didn't teach it bad, but this taught it way better than I ever could.
Oh, much better than you ever could. No,
for the simple fact that there's so many moving parts in Gloomhaven. Again, you got to deal with the magic system. You got to deal how you got to play the top card, the bottom card, how that your cards are your life points as well, and it teaches you how to do a short rest and a long rest. Short rest, your cards are taken away random. Long rest, you get to determine how to take your cards away. Okay, I don't need this one anymore. Let me get it out of here. And it teaches you thoroughly. The first 5 scenarios teaches you everything possible that this game could throw at you. So that when you do start the game, you have a point where you can reference to, but you really won't need that reference because it beats it into your brain. Like, this is how it works. This is what you're doing. This is how it's going to go.
Cool.
That was a tough one, but yeah.
I mean, if you want to learn a game, any of those first 4, it's worth reading the rule books as far as the best games go. And then just actively avoid the other ones. They were pretty rough. But with that being said, if you ever want to join us on one of our live chats, like all of our friends here, I normally shout out all the names, but let me see if I can remember them all. Illuminous, Creative Chaos, Corrupt, Ithri. There might have been more, but thank you all for joining in on the chat and voicing your opinions in this as well. If you ever want to join us on a live stream of our episodes, join us at twitch.tv/everydayboardgames, which now you can even subscribe and give us money. Just saying. You don't have to. You can still enjoy the free content. We're going to do this for free for a long time, I feel. But if you want to throw money at us, like, go for it, I guess. What right do I have to tell you no?
And remember, we're in a bit of a contest right now, so our email, Red Skull in the Body.
Yep, that's right. So, if you want to contact us directly, email us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com. If you want to enter our contest that we're doing right now for a free copy of Marvel United, which we'll ship to you, email us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com. In the subject line, put contest. In the body, put some way we can contact you. And for this week's episode, put in the code word Red Skull.
Also, we've decided we're going to open it up to UK, United States, and Canada.
Yep. And non-contiguous US, so Alaska and Hawaii.
As well, and then also you can find all video re-uploads on YouTube under youtube.com/@everydayboardgamespodcast. And if you like what we do, there are 3 things you can do to help us grow on that platform. Subscribe if you're not, like the video, and comment down below and tell us your thoughts on the subject. When you subscribe, you get an entry into the giveaway. As well as all audio versions can be found on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. This includes Google, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, and now
Apple. Sorry, I thought you were going to go verbatim off of your script.
And now finally on Apple Podcasts.
That's right.
In fact, you can also find us on TuneIn or Samsung and stuff like that. iHeartRadio.
Somehow. Anyway, everywhere you get your daily podcast. As always, we want to thank you so much for tuning in. I've been your host, Daniel.
And I've been your host, Daniel.
And thank you for listening to Everyday Board Games.
And remember, every day is a good day for board gaming.